All right, what is up, Utes fans? This is Joseph back with the Utah Utes Football Digest. We got a very exciting one for us today. Utah is heading to the swamp to take on the Florida Gators. It is the first game of what might be one of the most exciting starts to a season in Utah history. Coming in ranked at number 7 and going up against unranked Florida, which, to be fair, guys, Florida should not be unranked. It's crazy that they are. It almost makes this game even that much more nerve wracking. Florida's a good team. It's one of those teams that has a ton of upside, and you're wondering if they will achieve the upside. So this is a huge game for our season. We're going up against an SEC opponent, which is our chance to show that, last year wasn't a fluke, that we can go out there and go toe to toe with a very good Florida team that should not be unranked. That's crazy that they are. And we're going to get the opportunity to really go toe to toe with them and show what we're made of. They have Billy Napier at coach now. So there's a lot we're going to look into today, talking about how the team was last year, but also looking at Billy Napier's Louisiana team to see kind of what he's bringing, what we should expect from this team that we didn't see last year. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of changes, a lot of prediction, considering there's so much unknown with the new coaching staff. But this should be a ton of fun. It is time, guys. We are going to Florida, going to the swamp. This should be awesome. Let's go ahead and dive in and start breaking down the game. All right, guys, and here we go as we dive in. Like I said a minute ago, it is a brand new coaching staff, and so this is going to be a little different. We have to take a look at three teams in order to break this game down. We're going to have to look at the Utah Utes from last year. We're going to have to look at Florida from last year, and we're going to have to look at the University of Louisiana last year, which is where Florida's new head coach, Billy Napier, comes from. Now, these will all play a role, and we'll take it all with a grain of sand, but that's the only way that we'll be able to get a full picture of how this game might go and kind of how everything will work out. So first off, the betting line. You obviously got to look at the betting line first. It's a minus 2.5 favorite for Utah, which is really close to a push, guys. That's basically, it's anyone's game. And that's why I think it's so wild that Florida is not even ranked, that it's a push game against Utah, and Florida is not even ranked. But anyways, first off, let's go ahead and take a look at Utah. So looking at Utah, let's take a look at the defense first. So this is your opponent passing yards per game. When we look at opponent passing yards per game, it kind of paints a picture of, how much Utah lets up in the passing game. We averaged 223 yards per game. In the last 3 games, it was 268 yards per game. And in the very last game, it was 573 yards per game. So what that tells you, and that was that Ohio State game, they were lighting up the scoreboard on us. Basically, what that means, though, is that, we have a very good pass defense game in general, but that one game really kills the curve. So I would take that number 57 pass defense rank with Utah with a grain of salt. But to be fair, we did lose a really good pass rusher in Devin Lloyd and a really good safety in Vontae Davis. So for now, let's take it kind of at face value with Utah being number 57, maybe a little higher when you consider that a lot of those pass yards came in that last game. And now for opponent rushing yards per game. This is an interesting stat as well. Utah, it was 126.1 rushing yards per game. That put them as the number 21 team in the country for opposing rushing yards, which is really good. In the last 3 games of the year, Utah was only letting up 82.7 yards per game. In the very last game of the year, Utah let up 110 yards. So that 126 is fairly accurate. That paints a good picture. I'd say that 21st ranked run defense is very accurate for Utah. All right. And then the next thing is going to be passing yards per game for the actual team. So, how many pass yards per game did Utah achieve last year? And so, Utah was a pretty good passing team. It wasn't their number one thing, though. So, if you look at Utah, 210.6 pass yards per game last year, putting them at number 85 in the country. In the last three games, they averaged 195.3 yards per game. And in the very last game, they had 237 pass yards. How I'd look at that is definitely take it with a grain of salt. Obviously, it is a factor. Utah was more of a run team throughout the year, but it wasn't that Utah couldn't throw the ball. It's that Utah was really good at running the ball. Utah could run the ball down teams' throats, and we'll touch on that right now. So, um, but Utah, a great team in opposing run defense. So really good run defense team, um, really good uh, pass defense team, or like a solid pass defense team. But then this is where Utah is really going to shine, is going to be in the actual run game. So Utah finished as the number 11 rushing yards per game team in the country with 219 yards rushing per game. Last three games, 227 per game. And in the very last game, 226 yards per game. So that's very accurate. That 219, that's a real number. And I wouldn't be surprised if that goes up a little bit this year. We are losing TJ Pledger, but we still have Mekhi Bernard. We have Jalen Glover, and we have Tavion Thomas. I'd be shocked if that number isn't as good, if not better, this year for Utah. All right. Now, the next team we're going to be looking at is the Florida team from last year, a 6-7 team. Definitely had some real highs and some real lows. A team with a ton of talent, but it wasn't always clicking. So, first, let's take a look at their pass yard for per game. So, pass yards per game, uh, Florida. So, like I said, it's gonna be a whole new coaching staff, but this is still worthwhile data to look at to give you an idea about the talent that's currently on this team. They lost a lot of production, but let's take a look at the talent that's on the team right now. All right, boom. All right, so taking a look at Florida. um, Okay, so for opponent passing yards, Florida was one of the best teams in the country. I was not aware of this. So they were the number nine team in the country for opponent passing yards, which means they were top 10 for teams passing against them. And that means this is a tough team to throw against, right? They did lose a lot of talent on the defensive side of the ball, but we'll talk about it in a little bit here that Billy Napier's Louisiana team was a very good pass defense as well. So, considering a lot of the tools are already there, this should work in Billy Napier's favor. And now let's take a look at. Um, Now let's go ahead and take a look at how they rank in opponent rush yards per game. So this is a big one for Utah, right? Utah likes to run the ball against teams. So let's see how Florida did last year with teams running the ball. So Florida is the 82nd team against the run last year, 168.1 yards per game. 288 of those yards came in the very final game of the season. So I'd say to make this a more fair number, you'd probably want to bump them up more to like the number 70, 75 team, considering that last game was such a big game that got done on them. All right. And then now we're going to look at uh, the Florida's actual passing yards per game. So for Florida, the pass yards per game, let's see. All right. Okay, so 61st in the country. That's basically right in the middle. 171 of those in the last game, so probably actually a little better in passing than what we're seeing here. Maybe mid 50s, early 50s. So, decent team passing the ball. Nothing special, but a decent team passing the ball. All right, and now for rush yards per game. So they were 22nd in the country when it comes to rush yards per game. So very good rush yards per game team last year. 206 yards per game, 150 in the last three games. So that number actually might even be a little way down when you look at it. So Definitely a good squad last year. I'm surprised as I look at these numbers how good Florida actually was last year, considering that 6-7 record. But a lot of talent here. Um, so just to recap with you, so Florida, not too great against where was it? Okay. No, so actually really good against the pass, the number 9 pass defense team in the country. To be fair, the last game of the season was 148 passing yards in that game. So that probably raises that number just a little, like their ranking a little bit. But still, we're looking at a top 15 pass defense team, top 20 pass defense team, even without that game. All right, and then the next one we got their opposing rush yards per game. They did let up a decent amount of rush yards per game, 288 in the final game and 168.1 every game of the year. So you bump that one up probably like low 70s for that. All right. And then the next one we're looking at is going to be the pass yards per game, and that was 61st in the country. And finally, the rush yards per game, which they were 22nd in the country. So, very solid Florida team last year. And we'll go ahead and take a look at Billy Napier's Louisiana team next. And I think these numbers really makes sense because I've looked at Louisiana's year last year, and I think it's starting to make a lot of sense why they went with Billy Napier. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. All right, and now we are going to look at the Louisiana Lafayette team, which is Billy Napier's last year. Just to remind you guys, I know I keep saying it, I just want to make sure you guys understand this was Billy Napier's team last year. So it should give you an idea. So first off, the most impressive number is that they were number 4 in the country for opponent passing yards. So 179.2 opposing passing yards per game. The last 3 was 126.3 pass yards per game, and the final game a less than 100 at 99 yards. So I'd say those last 3 are such good games that it probably inflates this number a little bit, but still top 8, top 10, even without those. Really good pass defense team. And don't forget, guys, Florida was also a very good pass defense team at number 9. So start to think about that. A lot of these numbers are going to add up to you guys. Like these teams are surprisingly similar here. Okay. And then opponent rush yards per game, Louisiana Lafayette was 52nd in the country. Also, just side note, Louisiana Lafayette's playing in the Sun Belt. Take that into account. So 52nd in the country at 148.6 yards per game. Neither Louisiana Lafayette or Florida was anything special in the run defense. So and Louisiana Lafayette was actually a little better than that number of states. They were 174 rush yards per game over the last 3 games at 187 in the last game. So probably more like mid 40s without those last couple games. But either way, neither one of Florida or Louisiana Lafayette was like an amazing run defense last year. Both were really good pass defense teams. So you can kind of tell where some of this relation comes from. And then we take a look here at pass yards per game. This is where things get a little different. So, pass yards per game, Louisiana Lafayette was 212 yards per game and 278 in the last game and 235 yards per game in the last 3 games of the season. Why is that important? Why do I keep mentioning that? Well, the point of that, guys, is that those numbers are inflated a little. This one is actually a lot better because of that last game and those last 3 games. You take away those last 3 games, this team is probably more like 90th in pass offense. So not a great passing offense. Definitely something to keep an eye on there. And then when we look at run yards per game, so rushing yards per game for Louisiana Lafayette, it's 202 yards per game, 191.3 average in the last 3 and 220 in the final game. So really, really similar. Basically right there at 26, 25. Very, very solid team running the ball. So that's what you're going to want to expect out of them. So those are the 3 teams. And now let's go ahead and start talking about what some of that might mean. All right. Now, after looking at those different numbers, we can start to draw some conclusions, right? A couple disclaimers before I dive into it. This is the first game of the year. Teams can come out not looking how they should. Teams can come out off their game. There's a lot of factors involved. Who knows what we're going to see on that field? But these numbers we just looked at, guys, should give us a rough idea of what we should see. So, the first big advantage that I see Utah having is being able to run the ball. So, Utah's big offensive advantage is that they're going to be able to run the ball. This is not a spectacular run defense. It's not terrible, but neither Florida nor Louisiana last year was a great run defense. And I see Utah really, considering they had the 11th best run offense in the country last year, they should be able to do a really good job running the ball. So that'd be the first thing I see for Utah that's going to be a big advantage. Where Utah might struggle is that, Louisiana Lafayette is going to have a big advantage in pass defense. Both of these teams, Florida and Louisiana Lafayette, were really good pass teams last year. And it is going to be tough to throw the ball against these guys. I would imagine Utah is already well aware of that. The good thing for Utah is they're different than most pass offenses. It's so tight end heavy and, scrambling around with Cam Rising making plays that could play a factor. And we could see a little more pass game there than you might expect. But either way, I wouldn't expect a high flying pass attack in this game when we head to the swamp against Florida. I expect us to have much more ability to run the ball, and I actually could see this game getting pretty ugly if they don't sell out to stop the run, where that'll give us opportunities to play action the ball, get some tight end out routes, some tight ends up the seam, really see Brant Keithy and Dalton Kincaid make some plays. But more than anything, I think we're going to see Tavion Thomas, Jalen Glover, and we're going to see uh, what's his name? Tavion Thomas, Jalen Glover, and Mekhi Bernard really making some plays on the ground. Also, this offensive line should have a good time against a not so stellar run defense and be able to, push them around a little. And then when it comes to the other side of the ball, Utah is a pretty damn good run defense. So we honestly, and I hate to sound like too much of a homer, but Utah really, we do a good job in the run defense. We were the 21st run defense last year, and neither Florida nor Louisiana Lafayette is ranked higher than 21 in the run offense game. And I'm not saying that that's going to be apples to apples and that we're just going to throw them around, but we match up well with what they do, and they don't like we match up really well on defense with what they want to do on offense, and they don't match up super well on defense with what we want to do on offense. So I really see some big advantages here. Um, I really like how this is looking for Utah so far. All right, guys, and now let's talk about it. Like I said, this is the first game of the season, so there's a few things that we just cannot predict, and I like to call this the wild cards of this game. So the first wild card I want us to look at is Anthony Richardson. Now, Anthony Richardson had some real ups and downs last year, split time with Emory Jones last year, but he threw for 529 yards, 6 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. And so those numbers don't look impressive, right? They're not super impressive, but he was a very highly touted recruit, big time potential for a guy like Anthony Richardson. So he's going to be one of the wild cards because we saw him play like an extremely good college player last year. We also saw some games where he looked like one of the worst quarterbacks in the SEC. I'm just keeping it straight. Like I said, he did look really good at times as well, but there were other times where he looked like one of the worst quarterbacks in the SEC. So one of the big questions for this game, one of the wild cards, is how does Anthony Richardson look? Does he come out there looking really smooth and really fine tuned? He could be a game changer, right? If his arm is ready to go, he's ready to sling the rock, he's ready to make big plays happen throughout the whole game. He could be a huge playmaker for the Gators and definitely be a guy and definitely should be a guy already that we should not take lightly. How has he developed over the offseason? What does he look like coming into game one? That's going to be a huge factor of how this game goes early on. All right, and the next wild card for Florida is Justin Shorter. This is definitely a guy with a lot of hype coming into this year. Honestly, they kind of play hand in hand, right? We looked at Anthony Richardson, the quarterback. And now we're looking at Justin Shorter, the wide receiver. He'll be number 4 when you see him on the field. 6'4", 223 pounds. Just to give you guys an idea of what we're talking about here, I've heard him described as a DK Metcalf, DK Metcalf light, if that makes sense. If you guys are familiar with DK Metcalf from the Seahawks, you know, big, physical, super fast, really athletic specimen here. The good thing for us is that he is a wild card. I've heard a lot of hype about him. I know there's a lot of hopes. It was a crowded wide receiver room with a ton of talent last year, and he'll have an opportunity to really take the room if he can make big things happen. If you look at the bottom of the screen here, you'll kind of take a look. Last year, he got 550 yards. The year before that, 268, 137, and 20 before that. Basically, the yards have doubled every year, and he's done a lot with his opportunities, averaging 13.4 yards per catch, which is pretty decent. So definitely another guy where if he comes out hot, you know, it could be a big tough challenge for the Utes. So definitely a guy there. And just to touch on it, I'm not going to put him in here as a wild card for the Utes, but how does Clark Phillips match up with a guy like Justin Shorter? I know there was an interview that I watched the other day with Clark Phillips where he talked about how he was really excited for this matchup. I'm sure he's been looking at it all off season, and I think Clark Phillips will show up, but definitely a wild card. How good is Justin Shorter when he comes out on the field? All right. And then the wild card for Utah, guys, is going to be how will the Utes fill the void left by Devin Lloyd and Nephi Sewell? But more than anything, it's the wild card for Utah is the linebackers. How do these linebackers come out? Who is the starting two at linebacker? Are they ready to fill that void? I think it's a big one, right? It's a really big one. Mahmoud Diabate, Lander Barton, Justin Medlock, Karine Reed, a bunch of names. And I know a lot of Utah fans don't love that I keep harping on this, but it's how I feel. I got to be honest with you guys. I'm worried the high end's not there. I think we got a bunch of decent guys, but I worry against a great team like Florida, could this group get exposed a little bit? I hope that over fall camp that this position has been established. That there's two guys that look really good, and they slowly establish themselves as the top guys. My guess is they won't be a big liability, but I would say they're definitely one of the wild cards for Utah. Definitely something we shouldn't leave out. Just to kind of give you guys a little fun teaser of what my guess would be is I think we're going to see a good mix of linebackers in this game, which is really cool. We should see that because this is a running team. They want to run the ball. They're not a passing team. They want to run. I'm sure we'll, have 3-4 linebacker sets out there pretty often. From what I understand, there's a chance Gabe Reed is still injured and he's more a D-line anyways. But, anyways, though, so I'd say we're going to see a mix of Lander Barton, Karine Reed, Mahmoud Diabate, and, there's a lot of other guys. Maybe we'll see Justin Medlock get some reps, but those three definitely to me, Andrew Mataafa, a lot of guys, but you see what I'm saying here, guys? So many names I could throw out. Maybe that's a good thing, but it's kind of like I know it's not a quarterback, but when they say like you have a bunch of quarterbacks, like you have 3 quarterbacks, that means you don't have one, right? Same kind of idea. Who are the 2, 3 guys that are going to go out there and establish themselves as the starters at linebacker and the playmakers there? All right, guys. And then the next wild card for Utah is going to be the safety position. Let's take a look at this here. I feel like we all feel pretty confident that Cole Bishop is going to be one of the 2 safeties, right? He was such a good safety last year, really good run defender, which should help out a lot in this game with a team that likes to run the ball. But then there's a lot of questions who's going to be that next safety, right? A lot of talent here. Similar to the linebacker room, I just feel like in this room, we have one established guy in Cole Bishop. This room has a bunch of talent. You just wonder who it's going to be and who's going to shine. RJ Hubert, Clayton Isbell, Jaden Pearson, Sione Vaki, Zamaya Vaughn, a bunch of really good players. I wonder how that's been established at camp. Looks like a really good group of guys we have on the screen here. Is there one that's obviously ready to get the job done? Does this safety group, whoever's playing that second safety, are they ready to go out there and make an impact? Has someone clearly established themselves as the person? Like I said, I've heard really good things about RJ Hubert. Clayton Isbell, some of the best tape I watched out of anybody. Jaden Pearson looks like a great coverage guy as well. Sione Vaki, Zemiah Vaughn did a great role last year. Bunch of depth there. Who's the guy there? This is one of the wild cards. Do we have a clear established second safety that has grown, that has showed that they are, ready to be, um, one of the guys to make big plays in this game? So those are the wild cards for both teams there. All right, and now let's talk about the keys for the Utah Utes to win this game. First, first thing, pretty simple. Low mistakes. This is going to be the first game of the year. Last year, a lot of early mistakes. This year, we really got to hope that that's not what happens. If we can keep the mistakes low, low turnovers, not missing blocks, not messed up assignments, don't drop passes, that sort of thing. If we can go out there and keep that type of thing low, that'll go a long way in making sure that we come out victorious in this game. Because a young guy like Anthony Richardson, whether he comes out looking good or comes out looking like he needs a lot of work, should make some mistakes throughout the game. We can get a big advantage there. The second thing, running the ball. Does this offensive line look like they've established a mesh, that they've established themselves as a unit? I know there's a bunch of studs fighting for those starting spots, really good offensive linemen fighting for those starting spots. Do they look concise, clear, level headed? And are they pushing around that D line early in the game to create holes? Right. And, speaking about the run game, it goes back to not making mistakes. Tavion Thomas fumbled a bunch at the beginning of the year last year. Really scary, really stressful spot for us to start in and set us back a little bit. Can Tavion cut out those mistakes? Can that run game get moving? Is Jalen Glover ready to play a role, ready to be the second guy when Tavion's tired? Is Mekhi Bernard out there lighting up the field? Can we get that run game going? Can we really establish it early in the game? This is not a great run defense. This is an opportunity for us to go out there, establish the ball, control the game. They're going to be a big play offense. If you can run that clock down with the run game and make them feel like they're pressing to make a play all the time, it'll really limit what that offense, their offense is capable of. The next thing is, can we stop their run? Well, I talked about a bunch of questions in the linebacker room. There we have question marks on defense. Uh, I don't see that being a problem. I would imagine as long, we got some studs up front, Van Fillinger, Junior Tafuna, real monsters up front. Hopefully this linebacker room looks good, looks ready to go. And, establishing that run defense early in the game with a team that really likes to run should force them to pass. And that'll be awesome. If we can force them to pass, that's more likely that Anthony Richardson makes mistakes. Guys like Clark Phillips, Cole Bishop are out there and able to, create turnovers, stuff like that. So that's a big key as well. And then the number 4 thing, the final point that I'm going to make that'll be a big key for the Utah Utes to win is going to be the tight ends getting involved in the passing game. I feel confident this is going to happen. They're a really good pass defense, but we're a different type of pass offense. We're heavy in there with the tight ends. If these tight ends can have over 100, 125 yards combined, this will be a big deal, right? That'll be a big deal. That'll go a long way in loosening them up. If we let them stack 8 in the box, that hurts our ability to run, right? That hurts our ability to run. We need to be making sure that our tight ends are getting involved and making plays. That'll loosen them up, right? They won't be able to commit so much to the run because that's what they're going to have to do to stop it. They're not a great run defense team. But those are the keys to making sure we win the game. If we can do all 4 of those things really well, I think it'll go a long way. All right, guys. And as we reach to the end of this video, I'm going to give you guys my prediction, what I think the score will be at the end of the game, and how I think it'll happen. So first, let's talk about what I think is actually going to happen in this game. Like I've hinted at a few times and maybe said, I don't really remember. This is not an easy game. This is not a lay down. We match up really well, but we're going into one of the toughest environments in all of college football in the swamp, rough humidity this early in the year. probably plays a factor. But either way, you know, it's going to be a tough environment to play in. So, like I said, we need to limit Anthony Richardson. So, limiting Anthony Richardson, I think what's going to happen is he is going to go out there. We are going to play a bend but don't break type of defense, right? They're going to run the ball. I think they'll see some success there. But I think where we're really going to shine is putting the pressure on Anthony Richardson. We get them in third and fours. We get them in, third and fives, that sort of situation, because we're bend but don't break. And Anthony Richardson's going to make mistakes. Super talented kid, but he's going to make mistakes. Hopefully, he turns the ball over 2 or 3 times, and that would give us a huge edge there. I think that's what's going to happen, and we'll slowly pull away because of that. And how we'll complement that on offense is a real good ball control run game with Tavion Thomas, hopefully making very few mistakes by putting the ball on the ground. And then Jalen Glover and Mekhi Bernard, getting all those guys involved, keep them fresh, should be an awesome trio to really pound the rock and let us grind it out on these guys. And then if they do start stacking the box, like I said, I think we'll bring those tight ends into the game. Maybe Devon Vele makes a couple plays at wide receiver. But either way, so I see us running the ball really well. I see them having trouble stopping that. And I see us doing a decent job stopping their run. And then we'll slowly grind them out, force Anthony Richardson to be down by a decent margin later in the game. He's going to have to start slinging the rock rather than throwing the ball like they like to do. He's going to make mistakes. We're going to be allowed to kind of run away with this one. This is how I see the game going. 31-21 for Utah. Big win in the swamp. Sets the tone for the entire season. Hopefully we can get this done. I have a ton of faith in these guys, but we got to go out there and do it. It's a tough test to start the season. Even tougher considering they are unranked, which is unfair. This is a top 20, top 25 team. But outside of that, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, seriously, please make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're a Utes fan. I don't think there's anyone else doing it like I do this. Please subscribe to the channel. We're going to be putting out Utes content all damn year, and I can't wait to hear your opinion. Comment below what you think of the breakdown. Do you think I'm wrong? Do you think it's a closer game? Do you think it's a bigger blowout for the Utes? Do you guys think Florida actually wins this game? I hope you don't think so. But tell me what you think in the comments below, guys. It means a lot, and I appreciate all the feedback you guys can give me. I hope you guys like the new setup here with the video. I know I put a lot of work into this. But outside of that, guys, I really hope you enjoyed the video. I'm out of here. Can't wait for the Utes to go up into Florida, into the swamp, and smack around some Gators. Outside of that, guys, I'm out. Go Utes.